Welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar series Sustainability, what it's all about. Today, our topic is going to be microplastic. What is the big deal? And for that, we have Dr. Angela Collins. She's a Sea Grant agent in Manatee County. She will be talking about this issue. We also have Dr. Abby Turner. She's a agent in Sarasota County, and she does work with microplastic issues as well and water-related issues. And myself, I'm Armando Uda. I'm a Sea Grant agent in Sarasota County. And among all the three of us, we should be able to answer all the questions. But with further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Angela Collins.
All right. Thank you, Armando. So welcome to our sustainability webinar series. Happy Earth Day week. This is a good topic for the 50th anniversary of the first Earth Day. I'm going to be sharing a little bit with you guys about what we know about microplastics. And this presentation was modified from an original one that was created by Dr. Maya McGuire, who's a Florida Sea Grant agent in UF IFAS Extension up in Flagler County on the northeast coast of Florida. So again, you heard, Armando mentioned that I'm a Florida Sea Grant agent, and a lot of people don't know what Sea Grant is. So I always try to include a Sea Grant introduction slide whenever I give a presentation to an unknown audience. So Florida Sea Grant is nested within the University of Florida IFAS Extension, and we are a university-based program that supports research, education, and also extension throughout the state to conserve our coastal habitats and also enhance the economic opportunities for the people of Florida. So Florida Sea Grant has their fins in quite a lot of different issues depending on the agent that you know and the most pressing issues of the region that they're based in. That Florida Sea Grant agent can work on anything from sea level rise to sustainable fisheries to living shorelines to artificial reefs to there's just a wide variety of things that Florida Sea Grant works on. But the mission remains the same throughout the state of Florida. And Florida Sea Grant is actually a partnership with NOAA. And they have Sea Grant partnerships in all of the coastal states, including the Great Lakes. So Florida Sea Grant is an amazing program, and there are Sea Grant programs throughout the rest of the US and all of the coastal states, including the Great Lakes and Puerto Rico. So if you haven't checked us out online, feel free to Google Florida Sea Grant or check out floridaseagrant.org for more information. I'm going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. I am a fisheries biologist. I work in Manatee County in the Tampa Bay area, and most of my work is focused on commercial and recreational fisheries, as well as sustainable shellfish aquaculture. So this is my disclaimer for the water quality portion of the slides, but you guys are in luck today because we are also joined, in addition to Armando, we have Dr. Abby Turner, who's the Sarasota County Extension agent. She works quite a bit with water resources and water quality within our area. So if there are any questions along the way, Dr. Turner will definitely have answers if I do not. And also Armando knows quite a bit as well about our water resources here in this region. So please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have questions about what we're going to talk about. So what are microplastics? What's the big deal about these little tiny plastic pieces, and why does everybody seem to be talking about them these days? The basic definition of a plastic is a synthetic material. It is made from actually organic compounds, but it is the creation of a material that has a very, 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 very long shelf life. And plastics are very ubiquitous within our environment today. Since the 1950s, plastic production has exploded. It has done a lot of good. I mean, think about how many things in our lives that have been made better by the invent of plastic. And microplastics are also same kind of material, but they're generally defined as plastics that are less than 5 millimeters in size. So pretty straightforward there on what a microplastic is. It's a tiny bit of plastic. And there are primary microplastics and secondary microplastics. So usually when you think about plastic, you think about the things that are already in your life, like the plastic grocery bags and the straws and the food containers and computer housings, and all of these things that are made out of plastic. But all of those will break down into smaller and smaller and smaller bits. So all plastic eventually does become probably microplastics as it breaks down. These secondary microplastics, a lot of them do come from fibers. So if you think about the age of disco and all of those polyester pants that you might not have anymore, or that they might not sell anymore, bits of those polyester pants are still probably persisting within our environment. Polyester, nylon, acrylic, polypropylene are all synthetic fabrics that do shed these microfibers that can remain within our water supply. They're not captured necessarily within wastewater treatment plants, and these just do end up into our waterways eventually. So primary microplastics are basically where all plastics come from. All of the things that are made out of plastic began their life as a nurdle, which are these little tiny original pieces of plastic in their original form. So these are small microplastics that are basically shipped in the billions to different factories throughout the world and melted and molded into whatever plastic product is being produced. So these nurdles are, again, something that is becoming more and more ubiquitous within the environment. There is an actual TED Talk, and I'm not going to play it for you guys today, but I've provided the link here, and we can provide it in a follow-up email or in the chat at the end of the presentation today. But there's a really educational and slightly entertaining video on YouTube. It is a TED Talk about the nurdles and their quest for ocean domination. So check that out at some point. There are other primary microplastics that are often referred to as microbeads, and these are the tiny little pieces of plastic that are often used as fillers or exfoliators. They're found in a lot of personal care products. They are very, very, very small. Again, you can see this is the scale at which these tiny microbeads are produced. And they are in a lot of different substances that are really common to personal hygiene and daily consumer use. So polyethylene is the ingredient that you would like to look for if you're trying to avoid microplastics in your personal care products. You can see this polyethylene is circled down here at the bottom of the screen. And these are things, again, that are often not removed by our wastewater treatment plants. So it is something to be cognizant of when you are buying products. Check out the ingredients on the back of the label. In 2017, we actually did have an act that was signed into law called the Microbead Free Waters Act, and it became unlawful to sell products within the United States containing these microbeads within your face soaps and things like that. So hopefully this is having an impact on the amount of microplastics that are entering our water supply. And you can even see that if you visit some of the grocery stores, you can see a lot of these personal care products that maybe you used to buy now say new and improved. And if you check out the back, some of the labels will even say, you know, do not contain plastic derived products, or, you know, lacking polyethylene or whatever. So it takes a lot on the consumer's side of things to make sure you sort of know what to look for, look at the correct ingredients, and, you know, double check some of your products to make sure that they don't contain some of these substances. But as of 2017, most of these new products that are now on the shelves should have been modified so that they have natural substances in them instead of some of these microplastic particles that were becoming troublesome. So why do we care? Like, what's the big deal? Why are we talking about them so much? Well, they're plastic, remember. So plastic, the big story on plastic is that it takes forever to biodegrade and decompose. And plastics have become so pervasive within our environment because of the high usage of these products throughout the world. and they never biodegrade. I put that in quotes because they degrade over time, but it takes a really, really, really long time. So in the whole scale of things, plastics really remain on the planet for forever. And having these plastics within our water systems lead to them being consumed or absorbed by a lot of the marine life that are so important to our economics and throughout the world. This picture here on the right is of a small filefish. This is a sample of water collected from the Pacific Ocean. And this is just a very small fish that's been swimming in basically a sea full of lots of plastic bits. So when people think about plastics, a lot of times their images of the sea turtle eating the plastic bag, or the fish that's stuck in the six-pack ring, or these megafauna that are having this plastic problem. But the big plastics obviously are a big problem for a lot of our organisms within our water systems, but we also have tiny plastics that are throughout the water column. Some plastics float, some plastics sink, some plastics float at first and then sink after they degrade through time. So it really just is a pervasive problem throughout the water column, from the very surface of the water all the way down to the deepest depths in the sea. They found plastic products in the in the Marianas Trench. So we do have it's definitely something that has taken over a lot of our water. We have lots of plastic everywhere. So there's a lot of questions about microplastics specifically, and whether or not they have any serious or significant impact on marine organisms. These are little tiny plastics. They're not necessarily entanglement problems. Some of those questions include, do they bioaccumulate? Are they going to show up throughout the food chain like some of our heavy metals do, or pesticides? Things like that might have research on. And then also, not just how do these things bioaccumulate within the food chain of things that we consume, but are there potential human health risks for this accumulation of these plastic products within our systems? There is so much research right now on microplastics and their impacts and effects on our ecology and ecosystems. Some of the estimates I've heard right now, as far as peer-reviewed scientific papers that are being published, they have mentioned that there might be, I put 2 per week right here because I think that's a conservative estimate and I don't want to exaggerate, but I've heard some estimates says there's at least 2 microplastics papers published per day right now. So there are a lot of research teams that are working on this issue, from everything from large marine mammals all the way down to phytoplankton. So there is a lot of work being done, which is good. There's a lot of brain power behind some of these questions. So hopefully over time we'll have a lot more answers. Another problem with microplastics, besides just the fact that they're a particle in the water that's not natural and they take a long time to be there, is that other toxins really like to stick to plastic. Plastic molecules make a really nice adhesive surface for toxic stuff. So the toxins that are already in the ocean from other things can stick to those microplastics, and then the animals that consume the microplastics are getting a double whammy there. They're not just getting the plastic consumption, but they're also getting the toxins that have accumulated at a pretty high density on the plastic product. So just another thing to consider when we're talking about some of the implications of high densities of microplastics within our waterways. Throughout the presentation, you guys will notice that I've got some hashtags and also some web links on the slides that are definitely other places to go for further information as we move through the topic. So I talked about research, and I love to talk about different research projects. This is one of the original ones. It was published several years ago now. It was probably 2015 or 2016, but they've definitely found plastic-related toxins within plankton, which impacts our baleen whales, these filter-feeding marine mammals that consume high quantities of plankton. They're also consuming high quantities of really small plastic particles. Bringing it closer to home, Moat Marine Lab and Dr. Randy Wells, they've been studying the dolphin population within Sarasota Bay for decades. And in 2016, 2017, they sampled 17 individual dolphins from the Sarasota Bay population. They ranged in age from 2 to 34 years. And 71% of these dolphins did have plastic metabolites in their urine. So the dolphins, even within Sarasota Bay, are definitely being exposed to some level of plastic consumption. Otherwise, they would not have those metabolites within their urine. So that just kind of brings it back close to home because this was Sarasota Bay. You know, I talked about the dolphins and the whales. Those are the big charismatic megafauna in the ocean, but there's also potential impacts to some of the smaller, less thought about marine life, like our bivalves, our oysters, our clams, our mussels. They found in the Pacific oyster that when exposed to levels of microplastics within the water, they actually have impacts on their reproduction. So decreased egg production and sperm motility, which impacts obviously their ability to make more baby oysters. And also those oysters had higher larval mortality and slower growth rates than oysters that were not exposed to levels of microplastics. They found a similar finding in brown mussels. They found that they had impaired larval development. Not as many of the baby brown mussels made it to be grown-up brown mussels, which is going to obviously impact those populations in areas of high microplastic density. And then they've done some laboratory studies on crabs, and they found that crabs that were fed microplastic fibers would get full, basically, and they would consume less food over time. So their consumption of these little plastic pieces probably had some sort of they would just eat less, probably because they had plastic within their bellies. They weren't hungry, and that would lead them to consume less food over time, which led to slower growth rates and in some cases starvation of some of these animals that had a bunch of plastic within their stomachs. So these are some of the potential impacts that they've done laboratory and some field studies on, looking at exposure to microplastics in marine life. And it's not just our marine critters that are being impacted. They have, again, like I said before, there's a lot of research going on out there on where these microplastic particles can be found, and they have found plastic contaminants and table salt in China. And, you know, in seafood, there's anthropogenic debris reports out there. This was a big news story, microplastics found in human poop for the first time, but the number here was low. It was only 8 stool samples, so nothing to panic about yet. And even, again, in the name of not panicking, we still don't know if there are any serious negative impacts on human consumption of these tiny particles. But it's good that they are being removed from the body. That's good to know. They have been found in beer, tap water, sea salt, seafood. So again, these microplastics are pretty pervasive, and they're present within a lot of the things that we consume already. So this is just something to think about when we talk about the plastic problem. You know, all plastic will eventually become microplastic at some point in its life. And 8 million tons of plastic entered the ocean in 2010. And it's expected that that amount, even with all of the education and outreach people are doing to reduce plastic consumption, it is still expected with population growth and increased use of plastics. By 2025, the annual input of trash to the ocean, of plastic trash to the ocean, is expected to double. So this is just something to be aware of as we move through time. Solutions for plastic pollution are obviously you know, something that we need to be thinking about. So another thing I'd just like to bring up, because we all are concerned about the bottom line, healthy oceans are really pivotal to the economic health of an area, right? And so, as we all know, we're living in Florida, paradise, fishing capital of the world. The annual impacts, economic impacts of fishing in the state of Florida, that includes both commercial and recreational, and this is Florida only, and it's annual, so every year, exceeds $7.6 billion, right? So a lot of money is generated in the state of Florida based on healthy fisheries. We sell a lot of saltwater fishing licenses. lots of recreational marine fisheries support businesses out there, lots of commercial seafood are landed in the state of Florida. We supply here in the state 84% of the nation's supply of grouper, mullet, stone crab, shrimp, pink shrimp, and spiny lobster. So we're important to the U.S. and healthy oceans are important to the U.S. and good seafood obviously is important too. So this is just another one of the reasons when people say, why should I care about plastic? I just, bring it back home to healthy oceans and the importance of healthy fisheries to the state. So what can we do? Like sometimes it's kind of overwhelming to think about how much plastic is out there and how big this problem is. And sometimes people just look at me and say, so what do we do? This sounds like a problem that's just too tough to crack. And I think bringing it back to the simple, easy, small, sustainable footprint that make this little changes in your life can add up if a lot of people are doing those tiny little changes, right? So reduce, reuse, recycle, that was the big motto for a long time, going all the way back to that first day, Earth Day 50 years ago. And refuse has since been added to that probably over the past 10 to 15 years. Just, no, I don't need a plastic bag. No, I brought my own cup. Those kinds of things can make big differences if they're added up over big populations of people. Looking at your personal care products, I know sometimes that is a really disappointing thing when you turn it around and you're like, oh man, this has plastic in it. You feel bad about it, but check those labels and try to avoid things that contain polyethylene when you can on the personal care products. Participate in cleanups, looking for small plastics too, not just going for the big stuff that you can see from far away. Those little plastics matter too, right? This is just another one of those depressing slides showing how much plastic there is out there. They do international coastal cleanups every year and lots of plastic out there. So, and the top 10 items found during the coastal cleanups are typically all plastic related items. So it's just like drives the point home that this is one of the biggest things that ends up on the beaches and in the oceans. Another one for us office folk, although we're working at home right now, it's really easy to just keep drinking out of your mug, but continuing on with that habit, taking your mug from home or using reusable mugs at work is a really great way to just sort of reduce your daily footprint. And plastic bags too, everybody's heard that story 1,000 times. Bring your reusable bags to the grocery store. Another thing that is, in Florida, this one's a tough one because those microfiber shirts are amazing. The quick dry fabric and all of that stuff is something that is part of probably most of our wardrobes around here. So these microfibers that are on these quick dry, easy nylon or polyester blends, a lot of times do shed when you wash and dry them, right? And so those little tiny fibers end up within our water effluent, and wastewater treatment plants typically don't filter them out because most of these fibers are small enough to get through the filters. So try to avoid some of the synthetic fibers and stick to the natural fibers when you are able to. And if you're not or you're worried about it, there are becoming more and more options that you can do at home to help maybe filter out some of these. They make washing machine filters that you can plumb directly to your line, where the water comes out of your washing machine, and these have filters in them that are supposed to reduce the amount of microfibers that make it through your washing machine. They've also got some of these like little bags that you put your quick dry fabric or whatever you've got in that bag, and then you wash it, and it's supposed to reduce the microfibers that go in. There's also this little thing called a Cora ball. There's conflicting data on the actual efficiency and success of a lot of these different options. So, do a little homework. We're not, condoning one or another of these products, but I just wanted to let the group know that there are options out there, and more of them are being developed through time. So keep an eye on that if you're worried about the stuff that's coming out of your washing machine. Check out plasticaware.org. This Florida Microplastic Awareness Project started in 2015, and it was a grant that Maya McGuire received from the NOAA Marine Debris Program. And remember, Maya is the Florida Sea Grant agent in Northeast Florida. And she received this grant to really help educate the Florida public about the microplastic issue. And there are 27 regional coordinators now located in our state. And so if you contact a regional coordinator wherever you are, they can help set you up to become a volunteer. There are a bunch of volunteers that collect, filter, and sample water bodies throughout the state of Florida now. And all of this is tied to obviously the larger outreach effort nationwide on microplastics. So again, this project's been going on for 5 years now. It's really easy to volunteer for it. You can choose your own sampling site. A lot of the volunteers that participate like to sample maybe in the dock near their home or near their favorite fishing hole or out on the ocean when they're going out for a day on the water. So you just basically put your water sample in a liter jar and you keep it until you have a chance to filter it. Again, pretty simple. You don't necessarily have to do the sorting and the viewing on the microscope if you're not interested in that part of it. There are other volunteers that like the lab work and do spend more time on the microscope than some of the folks that might be collecting samples in the field. So there's an opportunity to give back or contribute to the Microplastics Awareness Project within the state of Florida if you're interested. This right now is the locations of all of the different places that samples have been collected from in Florida to date. You can see down here on the southwest coast of Florida, the warmer colors indicate higher densities of microplastics. So you can see we're kind of in a hot spot down here in the Tampa Bay regions. So, and we also have a lot of folks sampling here. So this is kind of just an informative map to take a peek at. So basically, what have we learned over the past 5 years is, yeah, microplastics are here. No big shocker there. There's quite a bit of microplastics that have been sampled by all of the volunteers that have participated. But most of those are at relatively low densities, number of pieces of plastic per liter is down here on the x-axis. And most of them is between 1 and 5 pieces. And most of those are the fibers, the little microfibers. So that seems to be the predominant thing that's being sampled by this program right now in the state. So again, just here's a little bit more information. Here's Dr. Maya McGuire talking about microplastics to a group of folks. And then again, here's another link if you do want to become involved. So I've already kind of gone over this, but there are things you can do to help to reduce your plastic footprint. Reading the labels, reusable shopping bags, skip the straw when you can. I know that's a sensitive topic for some. Reusable water bottles, reusable mugs. Bring your own to-go container or just eat all your dinner. That's what I do. Don't take to-go containers. Choose natural fabrics over synthetics. Recycle whenever you can. You can take the Plastic Pledge, which is again on the Florida Microplastics Awareness Project website. That just sort of it's a little pledge you can take to pledge your plastic reduction behavior change mission. So since 2015, we've had almost 3,000 people in Florida take the pledge, and an average of 3 behavior changes on the people that have responded to follow-up surveys. So hopefully some of these educational outreach initiatives are having some impact on consumers out there. So I like to end on a positive note. There's a ton of research going on, and there's always hope. The plastic issue shouldn't weigh you down because there are lots of things you can do to reduce your own footprint. And then again, there's a lot of research being undertaken at the moment to really, inform the problem. So right here, this was published in 2009, actually, so it's not even that recent, but it's an article looking at the biodegradability of plastics. So, it's not, some plastics do actually degrade and break down at a much faster rate than originally assumed. So not everything is there forever and ever and ever. There's also, obviously microbial degradation of some of these low density plastics that you can potentially utilize to try to get rid of plastics at a faster rate by, bringing the microbes in and getting them to do some of the work for you. And this one is relatively recent. This was 2017, but they found a fungus in Pakistan in one of those big rubbish dumps. And this is a never before identified fungus. And this little fungus it's really good at eating plastics. So that's good for fungus, right? So there's lots of stuff going on to help ease some of our worries about plastics, and we're always learning new things every day. So check us out on Facebook if you're interested, and also obviously our websites. And I just thought that this slide would be good at the end because it's a, it is Earth Day week, celebration of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So, think about that plastic product before you utilize it, if you really need it or not. If you have any questions, here's our contact info. Armando's not on here, but he is obviously also a resource, and he is at the same place as Dr. Tierna is in Sarasota County. This is me, I'm Angela Collins, I'm in Manatee County. And of course, Dr. McGuire in Northeast Florida is an excellent resource for all things microplastics in general. And with that, I think I will open the floor for questions. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I'm glad you tuned in for lunch.
Thank you, Angela. That's really informative. Really enjoy your presentation. So we have a couple questions. Before, just type them in the Q&A box or in the chat. I'm going to ask, but before we go into that, I'm going to give a chance to Dr. Tierna to talk a little bit, expand if she wants to, tell you about her programs that she has here in Sarasota County as well.
Thank you. So great talk, Angela. Thanks so much. Just drawing on some of the things that Dr. Collins talked about is that, so I work locally with high school and college students, specifically at Ringling College of Art and Design. And I talked to them about the Florida Microplastics Awareness Project. This school year, I was able to reach over 630 students on the project. We collected about 78 samples and filtered those waters and looked for plastic. I think the biggest thing that comes out of this program, though, is not how many plastics per liter we found, but actually their new gained knowledge. For one, 98% of all those students that I talked to this year had no idea that our clothing was made out of plastic. So that was huge, a huge revelation. And on the third day that I meet with them, which is also our last day together, I challenged them to come into the classroom with 100% cotton attire. And the point of that is because we're actually filtering our water samples, and you don't want to filter your water samples when you're wearing polyester yourself because that could contaminate your samples. So I only got about 8% of students who could come in with greater than 96% cotton. Now there's a host of reasons for that. One is that they forgot. Another one is that they just couldn't find enough in their wardrobe to put on 100% cotton. So I had 50 metal straws, and I was able to give them all out to the 630 students that I saw. So not a very big number of kids were able to come in with 100% cotton. And then finally, I think the other big thing that these students learn is that there are options, like Angela mentioned. There's ways that they can reduce, excuse me, Dr. Collins mentioned, there are ways to reduce their plastic footprint. And so 96% of them pledged to reduce their synthetic apparel. So they're deciding on their own once they figured out that, it was hard to find out 100% cotton and that their clothes are made of plastic, that they pledged to wear more cotton clothing and natural clothing. So I think that's a real benefit of this program. Plus they gain amazing skills, science skills to grab sample and to filter and then to use the microscope. So all in all, it's a win-win. I don't have the results of our 75 samples at this point due to my inaccessibility to my office and my data, but just know that the program has been fun, and with over 630 students involved, we've certainly learned a lot. Thank you.
Awesome. So I guess it's time for questions then, and any one of you can answer if you liked. The first question that we have is, don't the reusable grocery bags harbor a lot of bacteria? Wouldn't you have to wash them regularly? And would that not lead to plastic particles in the water system? So what about the reusable bags? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Abby, if you have more to add, just jump in. But can you guys hear me? Okay, so the reusable bags can harbor bacteria, but most of your groceries you wash before you eat anyway, hopefully, and a lot of it's already in plastic packaging when you buy it. So for the most part, I think that cross-contamination between your grocery bag and your food is not a huge concern, but obviously things like, raw meat and seafood, dairy products, those sorts of things should be handled with care. And then if you do have cotton bags, you can easily wash them in the washing machine. If you have those bags that they typically sell at the store, you're right. I think a lot of those probably do contain some synthetic fibers. And in that case, I would, a lot of times you can wipe things down. I do that with my son's book bag all the time because that thing is definitely harboring some experiments. So I use, Lysol wipes to wipe down his backpack, which is synthetic. So I don't know, Abby, do you have anything to add to that one, or Armando?
I don't have anything to add. I would just recommend, if you're not comfortable with any bacteria growth on your plastic reusable bags, then I'd recommend just buying an all natural version. They're out there, and it's a great option. You might need to carry more of them, but they're actually easier to carry because they're smaller. But I'd highly recommend that.
No, I don't have anything to add really, but just a personal thing that I do. Sometimes I forget my reusable bags and I just put everything in the cart, bring it to the car, and then I have more steps to my day of daily exercise. So you can always do back and forward between your car. Sometimes people look at me weird, but I mean, that's the way I do it anyway. Well, we have another question here. What about the plastic covering on dishwasher tabs? Are these plastic in this category? Should we be concerned about those as well?
I have that exact same question. I'm hoping that Abby can shed some light on that one.
I actually have the exact same question and looked to my dishwashing tabs to look at ingredients, and it's not listed. So honestly, once I found the barrier of not having a listed ingredient, I kind of just stopped my inquiry, although this has made me want to go learn more. So I will definitely do research, and I can respond via email to participants.
All right,
but
great.
I think that's a good point, Abby, is just check the back of your dishwasher, and with the ingredients list, hopefully it would be listed. I think that they are required to list the ingredient if it's there.
All right, another question. So this is for Abby. So you were saying that when you do the sampling with the students, you don't want it to wear polyester or anything that can, affect your testing experiment for plastic. So are we shading? Are we basically putting fibers in the air? What about those fibers?
Yeah, so we do shed a lot of fibers just by walking around. I always tell my students, do you ever look through a window when the sun is just coming up, or the sun's just going through the window in a perfect way, and you see all that stuff floating in the air? Well, almost 99% of it is going to be plastic particles. So all that's from shedding off your clothes, from shedding as you walk across your carpet, which is likely synthetic, everything from your sheets to your towels to your blankets to your clothes and carpets are going to be synthetic. And so all of that stuff does shed and create those dust mites, and those dust mites are often plastic related. So yes, we are shedding. I know that there's research on the amount that we shed, but I can't think of the numbers off the top of my head.
Okay, well, good to know. Maybe we can talk to the clothes companies and start making changes there. Another question that we have is, will spray in the bag with Lysol help? I think you, Angela, you want to expand into that? I think you already talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the sprays, obviously, I would worry about any sort of chemical residue on your food that might be more dangerous than the microbial community within your bag. So the little wipes, you can kind of control where all of that goes, and that might be I mean, but again, I'm not a healthcare expert, so I don't want to give any serious recommendations on the best way to avoid microbial growth on your grocery bag. But yeah, I mean, you could, an antibacterial spray would obviously kill the bacteria. You just want to keep in mind the chemicals that are in the spray also.
So I just remembered a study about the shedding in case you guys want to hear it. If there's no more questions at this time, may I go into that study? Okay, great. So what it was, as you heard Dr. Collins talk about plastic in different mussels and clams and oysters and stuff, there became a huge concern as to whether or not you were going to contaminate yourself by eating these seafood products. And so a group of scientists decided to have a dinner study. Basically, what they did was they had a shellfish dinner and different kinds of seafood dinner over time. And then they had a petri dish full of material that would collect just the particles in the air. And so what they wanted to do was compare how much they were going to ingest by eating the meal as opposed to the actual meal itself. What they found is that they were ingesting over 100 particles in the 30-minute dinner compared to just about a handful of particles from the meal itself. So just want to point that out as you know, a way to answer the question about how much we shed, but also to maybe decrease your concern over eating seafood that likely contains a particle or two of tiny plastic.
Thank you, Abby, for that. I do want to underline the health benefits of consuming seafood, that they probably far outweigh the risks of small amounts of microplastics, which you're probably consuming with any meal, not just a seafood meal. So yes, please don't be scared of seafood, because the health benefits of consuming seafood are ginormous.
I have to agree with that. And we do have another question here. Do you think companies such as 7th Generation are doing enough?
I think that's a great question as to whether or not companies are doing enough. I wouldn't want to single out any single company like 7th Generation. I think that we all could do more. I mean, honestly, I know I personally can do more, and I'm someone who educates about this all the time. I think everyone individually and then collectively could do more to solve this huge problem. So I like Dr. Collins' idea of, like, you're using probably reusable stuff at home every day right now. Can you continue that when you go back to the workplace? And I hope that you can. I think that, like I said, we could all be doing more. Companies could be doing more, but there are many companies that are leading the way, and there are so many positive stories out there. Like, if we were having an Olympics, the Olympics was going to be entirely single-use plastic free. So there was going to be no reusable or no single-use water bottles, no single-use Gatorade bottles, etc. Everybody had to bring their own reusable bottle, and there couldn't be any to-go items for lunches or whatever inside the Olympics. They were going to make it all single-use plastic free. So, but there's companies that are also doing, working to get away from single-use plastic. So there is a lot of hope. Could we be doing more faster? I certainly believe that we could be doing more faster.
Yes, I agree with that as well. I have a couple more questions for you. So how do we best dispose any polyester clothing that now we don't want to, own because of the plastic issue? So what's the best way to dispose those? That's the first question. So I'm going to wait to ask the second one.
I'll let Abby weigh in here too, but I would assume probably the best way to dispose of it would simply be to throw it away, put it in the right garbage container, and, it will go to the dump in a lot of cases. But in other cases where plastics and trash are incinerated, there have been some studies that have demonstrated that these fibers can end up in the air, but it melts. So Abby, do you have more information on what happens to the trash?
I don't, because I don't think that study has been done, at least not to my knowledge, about how many fibers escape from incineration. I don't think that, when we put scrubbers on those incinerating machines, we are looking at different chemicals, but we're not looking at particles of plastic per se. So that's something that I don't know too much about, and I'm not sure that study's been done. But I would just say, before you tossed out your polyester clothing, there are other things that you can do. One, you could only wash them when they're absolutely necessary to be washed. And two, Dr. Collins talked about all those things that you can add to your washing machine. I personally have one of those items, and while I can't say for sure that it's capturing 100% of my plastic load, what I can say for sure is that it's capturing a lot, because I have to clean it out regularly. And so because I have to clean it out regularly, every time I scoop out the stuff inside, I'm like, oh, well, I saved all that from going into the ocean. So you can reduce your particle load by adding one of those things. You could wash your clothes less, and then just start buying more natural fibers before you just go up and just throw away all your polyester. You know, there's also the question of, there's always environmental trade-offs, right? So if I buy a shirt that's made out of 100% recycled plastic, is that good? I mean, I'm gonna wash the shirt, but if I wash the shirt less often than I need to, and I put something on my washing machine that captures some of that plastic load, am I doing an environmental good? So these are questions that I don't think we've quite tackled, but again, there's always those trade-offs, and so you have to figure out which is doing the least amount of environmental harm.
Great answers. So are there any plastics that are okay? So since you're talking about, you know, reusing recycled plastic to make other products, any plastics that are okay for us to use, or all plastics should be banned?
Well, I mean, some plastics are really important and critical to, you know, healthcare systems, hospitals. Plastics have really revolutionized a lot of the medical care facilities that are out there. So, I mean, we're definitely not saying that plastic is, you can't stop using plastic right now until they develop an alternative compound that has similar properties that can hopefully replace plastic eventually. But, you know, obviously the point is just to try to minimize how much plastic you use, and especially those single-use plastics that you only use once and then they just get put back into the, you know, trash or the ecosystem. So, yeah, I don't know if one plastic is better than another necessarily, but I'll let Dr. Turner respond to that as well.
So again, thinking about those environmental trade-offs. So plastic, most plastic is made from oil and gas. And so if you have to drill deep into the earth to extract a fossil fuel to create something that you're going to use for like a couple minutes and then throw away, obviously that's not sustainable and not something that we should be doing anymore, especially because we know the harms of throwing that away. But if we make plastic out of something that's renewable, like a plant, like a corn or something else, a potato or a bamboo, then that plastic might be better as far as where it came from. The ultimate breakdown patterns are the same. So the way it breaks down is essentially the same as it would if it came from fossil fuels. But again, it didn't come from fossil fuels, so is it better? I mean, it seems likely that it's at least better on the front end of the production system, and maybe no change on the back end of the production system. But the good news is there are plastic products that are being developed that take just a few months to actually biodegrade, which means to turn back into its original natural components. And so that plastic will revolutionize the industry because it's made from renewable sources and it breaks down quickly and wholly, unlike fossil fuel plastic, which breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces over hundreds of years.
That's great. Great to hear. What about styrofoam? So somebody asked, what about styrofoam? It's widely used. Should we be concerned about it?
Yeah, we should. Styrofoam is probably the worst plastic because it takes the longest to break down into smaller and smaller pieces. It's also just, we know that it's not good for your health, that there's some toxic components, whether you are served it with cold dishes or hot dishes. So I do think that there's enough science now to point to the fact that styrofoam should be just totally and completely banned, not only for environmental health, but our own personal health as well.
Great. Somebody asked about if you can name some companies that are doing that. And by doing that, I'm guessing using the renewable plastics or science studying that. I mean, we can send it out, some more resources later on if you like, but do you have anything to say or add a few examples about companies that are actually using those biodegradable plastics?
Those biodegradable plastics are really just experimental, I think, at this point, and not available at scale for use. Dr. Maya McGuire has developed a fact sheet on them, so we can certainly send that out. I always tell my students when I hand them the fact sheet on the different plastics is that, you know, if they ever get money for a holiday, they should certainly look into buying stock on this new plastic, because they could be rich by the time they're my age. How awesome would that be? So we could certainly send you that fact sheet that tells you the differences between the different plastics. And they have acronyms, and I don't want to botch them by saying the wrong acronym. So I'm not going to talk about the acronyms, but definitely look into it and keep an eye on the production of these plastics. But like I mentioned, the ones that break down really quickly are not available yet at the market. But the ones that are made out of plant-based plastics are available. You just got to be careful with those, because they say they're compostable, which is different than biodegradable. And they are also just compostable in an industrial facility. And I know that at least in our Sarasota County region, we don't have one of those. So they're just going to the landfill, and they will break down over time, but the time is going to be quite significant.
Yeah,
Right.
just to add to that, the compostable thing is confusing for some people that have backyard composters. Don't put it into your backyard composter, because it is meant for an industrial compost facility.
Yeah,
And all of the fact sheets that Abby just mentioned are available on the plasticaware.org website, so you can find a lot of that stuff online really quickly also.
and we did try to compost just for experiment, and our regular compost bin, yeah, it wouldn't anyway. So yeah, you need an industrial facility. Well, we do have another question here. What about takeout from restaurants? Can we hand them our own container? Is it something that they will take and put our leftovers in there?
You can't do it right now. No, the all reusable personal containers at the current moment are not being accepted in any of the drive-through facilities. Obviously, based, social distancing measures. But typically, yes, if you bring your own container and you're eating in a restaurant and you hand it to the server, or you pull it out of your bag and you box your own food at the table, it's completely acceptable.
Yeah, I also so I do two different things. One, I'll call up, I'll ask what I will be getting my food in. And if I like their answer, then I won't say anything more. But if I don't like their answer, then I say, well, could you just put my sandwich in aluminum foil? Would that be okay? Or do you have a paper that you could wrap my sandwich in? So some restaurants are really good, and some have actually come to know me, and they know that I want my sandwich wrapped in paper instead of put into a styrofoam box. So you can always just ask what you want, and they usually want to serve you well. So.
Hold on, we have another question coming up. Can compostable takeout boxes go into recycling or into any home composter? So they are cardboard, right? That's the question.
Yeah, that's a good question about the cardboard ones. Regarding the recycling ones, I'll answer that one. Maybe Dr. Collins can answer about the composting ones. So for those that have a recycle symbol, you have to just check with your municipality to see what numbers on the recycle symbol they actually recycle. Different municipalities will recycle different plastic numbers. So you have to check that recycle symbol on the bottom with the number inside to see whether or not you can recycle it in your area.
Yeah, and regarding the composting, I think it just depends on the type of compostable container that you're talking about. If it's one of those compostable plastics, again, those are more for industrial compost facilities, and we don't have any of those in in the local area. So those would need to go into the trash. But some compostable containers you could easily compost in your backyard composter if they're made out of paper and you don't have anything oily or meaty residue in that container. So I think the answer for that one is it just depends.
Great. And we do have another question. Oh, hold on. No, we don't. All right. Any more questions from anybody? Well, I don't think we have any more questions. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Angela Collins and Dr. Abby Tierman, for presenting today. This is great conversation and great presentations. If you do have further questions, please send them our way. You have our contact information, so you can send them that way. Hold on. Thank you all, just thanking us. We do have another webinar coming up this next week. We have 3 webinars in this series this month, just to the celebration of Earth Day. And then we have one every month for the upcoming month for this year. So please join us. You can find us in Eventbrite. or you can go into our websites. Do you anybody want to add anything else before we go? Angela, Abby?
Happy Earth Week, everybody.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yep. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Great job, you guys.
You too.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.